Hey Jews, continuing to learn from Loaz, the Book of Esther. Why? So that on March 13th, 2025, which is also the 13th of Adar, 5785, our current time, which is during the end times, that we will fast. So we will by then hopefully understand the significance and the importance of fasting, returning to God in repentance, all of the nation of Israel, and hopefully getting what they got after Purim, which was a redemption. They came back into the land, built the second temple. That is literally what we want to do. The end of the story is when all the Jews return to the land of Israel under the Torah with God and build the third temple. That's the redemption. That is basically the end of the story. The Torah is the story of the Jews, the nation of Israel, from the beginning to the middle, which was Purim, to the end. We are here, 5,785. Going forwards, everything about us is written down with godly wisdom, from godly wisdom. That's what the prophets had. The prophets had godly wisdom and understanding, and God told them, write this down for the end generation. Now, one of the things that I find very interesting from becoming a Baalat Tshuva, somebody who did not, a Jew who did not live by the Torah laws, until I repented and returned to live by the Torah laws and to pray to God. Before I didn't pray. I didn't do any of that. I was a secular Jew. And one of the things I find very interesting in the Orthodox Jewish community, and I say that like that, Orthodox, because a lot of things what we think are Orthodox, are just people that dress a certain way and maybe, keep Shabbat, but don't necessarily learn Torah and live by the laws. That's unfortunately what I'm seeing. So that helps us Jews understand, why hasn't the Mashiach come yet? If the Mashiach was going to come, he would have come. Not necessarily so, because because we don't understand at this point that what a lot of people are doing is not this. It's not living by the Torah laws. It's just reforming them to whatever degree. And I've gone over this in many, many different videos. I'm not going to continue. But what I'm trying to say is that what I think is interesting is there's not a lot of people placing a lot of emphasis on the fact that this is actually the time. And we are definitely in the end times. Therefore, everything is written down for us in the prophecies. So all we would have to do is become conscious and aware of the fact that we are now the Jews. We are now the people, the nation of Israel, in the story. We're here. Everything's written down for us. Let's look around and understand where we are and try to achieve the actual goal of the nation of Israel that has been from the very beginning, which is to reconnect this reality with God. That's literally the goal. So we have to understand reality correctly according to the information, the wisdom of the creator of this reality, which is all in the Torah. So what we want to do is to get what they got during Purim, which was a redemption, to come back into the land of Israel and to build the temple. That's what we want. So we're leading up to the fast of Esther, which is a big auspicious time in our reality, spiritually, to fast and repent on March 13th, the 13th of Adar. And that's why we continue to learn from the Book of Esther from Loaz, so we will understand it. So we're on 1.8. והשתייה כדת אין אונס, כי כן יסד המלך על כל רוב ביתו לעשות כרצון איש ואיש. The drink was right. No one was forced, for the king had ordered all the stewards of his house to do as each man wished. Often, at large banquets, people are pressed to finish their drinks quickly. There are not enough cups, and people must finish so that the cups can be used for others. Here, there were so many cups available that there was no need for anyone to hurry. Since the banquet was to last for 7 days, if people felt compelled to drink, they might overindulge. Not wanting anyone to get sick at his banquet, the king gave instructions that no one should be compelled to drink. Whether one wanted to eat first or to drink first, he could do as he wished. The meal was served in individual dishes so that each person could eat as quickly or as slowly as he pleased. It was not served buffet style, as is the custom in many Eastern countries. It was as each man wished. There is also an allusion here to an ancient Persian custom. A huge 40-ounce cup would be set before each guest at a royal banquet, and he would be forced to drain it. People would get sick and sometimes even die from such excess. At this banquet, the king gave special orders that the large cup not be brought out. Each person could drink exactly as much as he as much as he pleased, no more and no less. As mentioned earlier, the banquet was meant to gratify all the senses. Since nothing had been done for the sense of hearing, the king now included it in his order. The fact that a person's wishes would be followed instantly by the stewards would gratify the sense of hearing. The verse literally states that the king had ordered all the stewards of his house to do the will of a man and man, ish ve'ish. The allusion is to Mordechai and Haman, both of whom are referred to as a man, ish. Mordechai is called a Jewish man, in 2.5, while Haman is called an enemy, a hateful man, 7.6. We'll get there. Haman naturally wanted the Jews to drink as much as possible, while Mordechai wanted precisely the opposite. Both had petitioned Ahasuerus, each presenting his desire. In order to satisfy them both, the king gave orders that each person be allowed to drink as much as he wanted. The stewards were also under orders to do as each person desired, serving each one wine from his native land. People usually prefer the familiar. As a result of this order, the Jews were served only kosher Jewish wine. Ahasuerus's advisors had cautioned him not to force people to drink too much for another reason. Since the citizens of Shushan came from all 127 lands of his kingdom, if they were allowed to get drunk, fights would be likely to break out because different national groups' prejudices became much stronger when inflamed with wine. Ahasuerus had an ulterior motive in not forcing the people to drink. If a person does something wrong while drunk, he has a ready defense, especially if he had been forced to drink. In order not to give the Jews an excuse for their misdeeds, the king ordered that all drinking should be purely voluntary. Ahasuerus wanted the Jews to sin by drinking Gentile wine and eventually to be tempted into committing sexual misdeeds. As he well knew, one sin leads to another. Since he made the drinking voluntary, so that they would not have the defense that they could not disobey a royal order. One sin leads to another. This is interesting, and a mitzvah. We're told that the way in which a person wants to go, he is led. So if you want to do mitzvot, if you want to follow the Torah laws, then you are basically there's something spiritual, let's just say, that will help you go in the way in which you want to go, either to the good holy way or to sin and go to a bad way. Whatever you choose, that's your free choice, then you are helped from above or below. So in, I can't remember which part it is in the Gemara, I don't remember, says, I think it was Marasha said that, one of the commentators said that to this, in the way that a person wants to go, he is helped, means that when we think of doing something good, let's say a mitzvah, one of the 613 mitzvot, we create angels. We create angels that help us achieve that. And when we are inclined to sin, when we want to sin, when we think of sinning, we are creating bad angels that help lead us in that direction. And one sin follows another, meaning if you're already going in that direction, it becomes easier and easier to go in that direction. So that's what Ahasuerus knew. They knew a lot more about reality than we do today in the end times. So they all knew that, and they wanted the Jews to sin. That's the playbook of the Sitra Achra that are not creative. That's what Bilam and Balak wanted to do. They wanted to lead the Jews to sin, because when the Jews are following the Torah laws, and doing the mitzvot and doing God's will, basically. Nothing can harm us. We're together. God is protecting us. But when we use our free choice to sin and to do other things, especially sexual, immoral acts, then God turns away from us. We don't have this connection. We break the connection, which is why God tells us at the end of time to his prophets, return to me and I will return to you. All the things that are happening in our reality that are bad for the Jews, and all the things that happened is because of this broken connection. So that's what Bilak and Balaam said in the Torah, when we first got the Torah, when we first accepted it. They wanted us to sin. So they laid a trap for us, especially for the men, to go and sin with sexual immorality. So that's, again, what Hashverosh wanted us to do, was to choose to drink and to sin in this feast. Okay, but he made it voluntary. He made the drinking voluntary so that they would not have an excuse. They could not use the defense that they were just afraid of Ahasuerus, and so they had to drink. So again, it's your own choice. Only with regard to drinking, there was no coercion. The Jews were forced to eat. Fearing that they would not drink at all and thus not sin, the king forced them to eat Gentile food. In this manner, the king also satisfied both Mordecai and Haman. Since Haman wanted the Jews to sin, they were forced to eat. But because Mordecai did not want them to get drunk, they were not forced to drink. Some commentaries say that neither Haman nor Mordecai wanted the Jews to come to the meal or to drink. Haman felt that inviting the Jews to the feast would be a sign of recognition and honor, which he did not deem fitting for the Jews. Once they were there, he did not want them to drink and have an excuse for their misdeeds. Mordecai, on the other hand, did not want them to come or to drink, since both would be likely to lead the Jews to sin. Ahasuerus satisfied them both by not coercing the Jews to drink. So that's the whole concept of putting fences around things. So you don't even get close. Don't go to the feast. Then you're less likely to sin there. That's the whole concept of putting the gdarim, the fences around things that could lead you to sin. You need to be understanding and wise. Understand with wisdom and be wise with understanding how you live your life, because you're trying to guard your soul. Because without guarding your soul, you could be tempted to sin, because there are people in our reality that want the Jews to sin. Why? So that we won't have the protection of God. Why? So that they can do all sorts of things to annihilate us in every single generation. They rise up to kill us in every single generation. Why? Because they don't want reality to end. Because when reality ends, all of evil will be destroyed. And what do we know now about our reality? It's pretty evil. There's a 1% satanic elite that making all these decisions for us in our world. They're going to reset it for us. And we're going to have less and less freedom. And we're going to be happy. They said we're not going to own anything, and we're going to be happy. So instead of that, what the Jews want is this. We want the redemption. So that's what they got when they did the Fast of Esther originally. And that's what we, again, want now. So this explains the Talmudic teaching. A man must get so drunk on Purim that he does not know the difference between curses Haman and blesses Mordecai. I'm not going to read the rest of this because I think that this is something that other groups of people have taken out of context in terms of how they celebrate Purim. So I'm going to skip that. Chapter 2, finally, 1.9. Gam Vashti Hamalka Asta Mishte Nashim Beit HaMalachut Asher Lemelech Achashverosh. Queen Vashti also made a feast for women in the royal palace of King Ahasuerus. As mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that Ahasuerus made his feast was to celebrate his marriage to Vashti. Vashti made a similar feast for the wives of the governors of her husband's lands and the ladies in waiting. Her feast was equal to that of Ahasuerus in every respect. Ahasuerus hoped to cause the Jews to sin by participating of his meal and by committing sexual misdeeds. Vashti tried to get the Jewish women to commit similar sins. Just as did Ahasuerus, Vashti showed off her wealth to the assembled women. She even came in wearing the vestments of the high priest as her husband had done. So they took the stuff that was in the first temple and they made use of them. Vashti did this out of pride. She felt that Ahasuerus had become king only because of his marriage to her. She was a daughter of the great Belshazzar. He was like Cyrus, who inherited the kingdom from his father-in-law Darius I. She felt that she should have been crowned as regent, but since such power was not given to women, Ahasuerus had been made king in her stead. She looked upon Ahasuerus as if he had been nothing more than her father's janitor. This was far from the truth. Ahasuerus inherited the throne from his father Cyrus, who was king of Media and Persia. After Belshazzar was murdered, Vashti was merely an orphan, and if Darius had not taken pity on her, she would have been killed along with the rest of her family. She was an outsider and only became queen because she married Ahasuerus. Vashti therefore wanted her feast to be equal to her husband's in every way. She did not want to admit that she owed everything to Ahasuerus. She wanted to show that she was the one of true royal blood. This is alluded to in the wording above, which literally says, although Vashti the queen made. At first she was merely Vashti, an outsider and commoner. Only later did she become the queen. Although Ahasuerus and Vashti wanted to tempt the Jews into committing sexual misdeeds, they did not seat the men and women together because of appearances. We should learn a lesson from this and keep men and women separated at weddings and similar celebrations. That's why we separate when we have celebrations like a wedding. We separate the men and the women, because we're told also that when men and women are joined together, especially in where there's food and wine and whatever, it could lead to immoral thoughts, which could lead to immoral deeds, which will separate us from God. So we don't do that. We keep it separate. So, some commentaries maintain that the women were seated in an open patio in the palace where they would be on display for the men. The men would thus have their desires inflamed by gazing at the women. Vashti did want to display her charms to the men, but was prevented from doing so for reasons that we shall soon see. One of Vashti's chief motives was to cause the Jews to sin so that they would not be worthy of rebuilding the temple that her grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had destroyed. God punished her for this, and she was killed. Ironically, as a result, Esther took her place, and Esther's son Darius II had the temple rebuilt. That's in Ezra 5. So again, when they came back to the land and built the temple, there were prophets and sages that came, like Ezra, and he wrote the Book of Ezra, which outlines all the families. There's the unbroken chain of information. All the people that came back to Israel and built the temple is written there in the Book of Ezra. And in the Book of Ezra and Nehemiah, they made sure that when they read the Torah, they made sure that everybody understood. Meaning they didn't just read it and everyone was like, oh, great, shkoyach. They were like, we understand the importance. We understand what we're learning here. We are understanding reality again. And so that is why they translated it into Aramaic, even though they were only gone about 70 years. Now here we are in exile thousands of years, and we need to make sure that we understand the Torah, which is why Rav Yaakov Kuli made Ma'am Loaz for that exact reason. So that's why we're reading from Ma'am Loaz, and everyone, I think, should learn the Torah from Ma'am Loaz. So this verse points to the irony of the situation. If Vashti had not made the feast in the royal palace, she would never have been killed. Ahasuerus would not have summoned her, and her refusal would not have brought about her death sentence. Providence directed Vashti to make this feast so that she would be disposed and Esther would take her place. see. Okay, one more. ביום השביעי כתוב לב המלך ביין אמר למהומן בזתה חרבונה these are all these names that I can't pronounce. So this is 110. On the 7th day, when the king's heart was merry with wine, he gave orders to Mehuman, Bizetha, Charbona, Bigtha, Abgatha, Zethar, and Kalkas, the 7 ministers who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus. On the first day of the feast, Mordecai and the Sanhedrin assembled and fasted for 6 days. From Sunday until Friday. All week they prayed that God would not destroy Israel. On the 7th day, which was the Sabbath, Shabbat, their prayers were accepted. So just so you know, Jews, not all the time when we're praying are our prayers accepted. We should understand that, understand how to pray properly. So don't think that, oh, I prayed and God didn't answer my prayer and there's no God. And no, we have to understand what we're doing and how to do it. So on the 7th day, which was the Sabbath, their prayer was accepted. Vashti was summoned before the king, and when she refused to come, she was executed. As a result, Esther would take her place and would be in a position to save her people. Ahasuerus had 7 ministers, one for each day of the week. The 7th day was Shabbat. Until this day, the king did not immerse himself in eating and drinking because he was concentrating on showing off his wealth. Like a good host, he ate and drank only a little bit. He spent most of his time with his guests. On the 7th day, however, after he had seen to all his guests' needs and displayed all of his wealth, he himself began to indulge in eating and drinking. And we will continue from there later. So again, let's try to understand our reality. Let's try to understand that we're here, 5,785. We are the Jews in the story now. Everything's written down for us. What do we need to do as reality continues to continue? What can we understand and what do we need to do?